This is Talk Star Wars, the official podcast of talkstarwars.co.uk. Hey everyone, welcome back to Talk Star Wars. I'm Mark.
And I'm back, baby!
He's back. It's just the two of us this week. Rob, how was your week away?
It was wonderful, thank you. Much as I did miss being on recording, I was enjoying myself in sunny Portugal, so it made up for it quite a bit.
Very nice.
Yeah.
There was a joke on the Facebook live stream before the show that we might not recognise you because of your red arm.
Oh, yeah. I shared it to the VIPs. Basically, I caught the sun a touch, and it made my arm a little bit pink. So I thought, since we've been having a long running joke about the red arm in the group, so I thought I'd join in. Yeah, because I like to be included.
Yeah,
It's no bad thing.
Should be powered
even when
down.
it should be powered down, I'm still in any excuse for a good gag mode.
Even if it's self-harm.
Because I am a whore.
Oh, that's great stuff. Right, so Steve and Paul cannot be with us this evening.
Boo.
For boo-hiss, for scheduling reasons.
Tell Steve he's a scumbag from me.
Yeah, I will.
Crack me up when I listen back to that.
Yeah,
it was brilliant because it's exactly the kind of joke I'd have told. And it was just.
I think I might have worked out who it was that sent that review.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's Steve.
Oh,
it's recorded. It's on record.
Oh no, that's true. Yeah, but
he read it with complete conviction as well. So I have no doubt that it's him.
Let's say hypothetically that someone else was involved. I will share my thoughts off air.
Fine.
Or maybe we can discuss it with him in person on Saturday. Right. Before we get started, we got some thank yous to give out to some glorious people. So we want to say thank you to Ina Swede for subscribing to the YouTube channel, and I would just like to say, if I did brutalise your name, apologies. There isn't a phonetic breakdown on YouTube, unfortunately.
No. And
thanks to Blake Harmer, that's a name I know.
I know that name.
Jamie Vance, Reese Wadmore, TJ Hodder, Carly Church, and Elizabeth Ann Bro for liking the Facebook page as well this week. So
marvellous.
There was a huge push on Facebook today because it was very quiet, and the VIPs sort of circled the wagons and went out there and drummed up some new likes. So,
as did I.
Yes, you did
I
indeed.
Did the same.
Obviously, with that first name up there.
I did kind of. It helps.
So thank you for everyone that jumped on board this week, and to the countless people that followed us on Twitter as well. It would be a fool's errand to try and break down all the fresh Twitter follows every week.
I wouldn't even want to think about it. We're such big deals.
Well, there are quite a few that come and go each week. Obviously, there are some genuine follows, and there
I know. There's some what's it called, bandwagon brigade things where they want followers, or they want you to expand certain organs naturally.
Yeah, but I am one step ahead of those people. So
because I sell their stuff, I undercut them when I sell their stuff.
It would be very, very difficult to sort of break down everybody that follows us on Twitter. So if you have followed us on Twitter at this point, out. Thank you so much. It's greatly appreciated, seeing as that's where most of our stuff goes.
If you're real people, let us know you're out there. Reach out.
And if you're a bot, then just jog on.
Do one. Do 0 or 1, whatever you want.
Yeah,
binary.
Yeah, binary. It is binary. Yeah. Let's move into our review section. So don't forget that you can take advantage of our Ron Burgundy policy. That means whatever you write in a 5-star review, I or one of my colleagues, revision.
I heard that one.
We'll read that verbatim. So if you want to promote your podcast or your blog, that's where to do it. There's only one rule: keep it clean. We actually got a genuine review this week, which always warms the cockles.
I thought last week's was genuine. I don't know what you mean.
I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah.
We'll move forward as if it is.
I will reject that reality and substitute my own.
I don't think Steve's that convincing a performer to be able to pull off a piece of improv like that.
Oh, he's clearly never been to RADA, no.
No, certainly not. Or who was Mary Shelley, as he liked to call it in the previous episode. I'd never been to Mary Shelley. So this is a 5-star review we got. It's entitled, "This podcast is awesome," and awesome is all uppercase, so you know that's meant.
Absolutely.
And that's from C. Fraley, 2998. And it goes something like this. I've been listening to the podcast for almost a year now, and I can definitely say that it is the best Star Wars podcast around. Not only do the guys have great opinions and intriguing thoughts on a wide-ranging topics, but they manage to make it simply fun. The guys make listeners feel like they're a part of the conversation, and I personally always am engaged. Keep up the good work, guys. You're awesome. P.S. The cold heat moment from Steve last week was one of the best moments of the show.
That's the week before last, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
this, busting his chops, as I should. Cold heat.
That was genius. So
I loved the. Who was it who put the poster up? The Arnie, like it was an Arnie movie.
Yeah.
I cracked up. Absolutely broke me for hours.
Who'd have thought we'd be generating memes even this early in our podcasting career?
Well, quite so.
That's great stuff.
Up from here.
Sia Fraley, thank you so much for such a genuine review. It's nice because with this Ron Burgundy policy, anything can and has happened. So when we get these genuine reviews with such kind feedback, it really does mean a lot. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's lovely.
And now we move into listener comms. So you can send questions and comments via Twitter and Facebook, or you can send us an email. And if you attach an MP3, we'll play it into the show like a voicemail. You send that to talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com, and that's talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com, just in case there's any confusion. Rob, would you like to take Ian Jolliffe's email this week?
Absolutely. Right, so Ian writes, "Hi chaps, a question for you. Were Obi-Wan and Yoda sexist?
Yes.
Obi-Wan was sent to watch over..." Hang on.
Sorry, I'm getting there, to move things along.
I'm getting there, Tumblr. Give it a rest. Obi-Wan was sent to watch over Luke, but why Luke and not Leia? Leia had the Organas to raise her, but Luke had the Lars too. Did Obi-Wan feel the male twin would more likely be stronger in the Force, or was it simply that it would be more difficult to hide himself on Alderaan? Maybe he tossed a coin. Come to think of it, why could Yoda not have watched over one of them? Bit selfish, that Yoda. Anyway, what do you think? Keep up the outstanding work, Ian Jolliffe. Yeah. Right, so the breakdown is a really simple one-line question, which is, were Obi-Wan and Yoda sexist? Now, I have a feeling I know your point of view on it.
No, I don't think so at all. There are other elements to this question I'm sure we will get to organically, but that seemed to be the crux of this thing. Should we just let's just address the Yoda thing first off.
Yep.
Could he have watched over one of them? It would have been about a month before those children were twice his size. So I think it would have been ridiculous for Yoda to take one.
And also, not for nothing, but the young immune system is probably not built for Dagobah.
I don't know.
It doesn't look like a particularly sanitary place.
It might help them build up an immunity to all sorts of stuff.
There is a certain amount where past which it's character building and at which point it becomes torture. So I don't know if that's the case.
Children living in a petri dish, basically.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, there's something to be said for, being exposed to that stuff, but there is a limit.
Yeah. All right, so the crux of this question then, why did Obi-Wan take Luke and not Leia? There is a canon answer.
Oh, okay. I had a theory, but mine's actually kind of a little bit sort of soppy and...
Well, let's go with that before we get to the rather blunt canon answer.
Well, mine is really simple that, Leia was being taken in willingly, whereas Owen and Beru actually didn't agree to anything.
Yeah.
It was just, he said, they actually said specifically, we've always wanted to adopt a baby girl.
Yes.
So not only do they want to,
that's
not
the canon answer I meant, yeah.
Yeah, so they were specifically looking to adopt a baby girl. Now, if you want to talk sexist, the Organa.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
there might
What's
be
wrong
more,
with adopting a boy? I'm kidding.
That might be quite an interesting question to ponder, actually. Why was Bao so keen to take a girl? And could it be something to do with succession? On Alderaan?
Yeah, because Alderaan works differently, doesn't it, than the traditional structure. And
there's plenty of talk. I know we were discussing with the Skyhoppers some of the internal politics of Alderaan and the fact that the Organa might be Bao's wife's family name. And that's the way the gender dynamic works on Alderaan.
Right.
So maybe the girl was taken, maybe Leia was taken because of that line of succession.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, that would be a more interesting question. I think I'm not dissing Ian's question, but that would be a fascinating conversation because
interesting to know the answer to that one, wouldn't it?
There isn't an answer to it at this point, but there is an answer to the question: why was Obi-Wan sent to watch over Luke? He wasn't really. They didn't choose Luke. It's just that Leia was chosen to go somewhere.
Yeah,
else.
Exactly. So because they specifically wanted a baby girl, Obi-Wan was like, right, well, that leaves the boy then.
Yeah. And
I'll take him back to his family. Yeah, and then Yoda says, take him back to his family, basically saying, I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
So if you want to take him back, I'll be very grateful. You'd be doing me a solid. Cheers, mate. Love a duck. Gore blimey, trousers off I go.
Yeah. So
Cockney Yoda is
800 years, I've not had a minute to myself. I'll
tell you what,
build a mud hut somewhere quiet.
I'm sick to the back teeth of bloody younglings, because if Anakin hadn't done him in, I was about 2 days away.
Yeah, that's what you didn't see. Just outside the door at that exact moment was Yoda getting ready to ignite his lightsaber, thinking I could do it now and no one would know.
Yeah. And he just hears one go and he's like, well, I did not expect that.
That was close. That's him when he's on his therapist's couch on Dagobah. I came so close.
Analyze this. Episode 3.8. Analyze this.
No, this analyze it would be called, wouldn't it?
This
analyze. Someone do a mock-up of that DVD cover art. That would be fantastic.
I'll feel you.
So that, Ian, I think that is kind of the answer to your question, really, was Obi-Wan had to go watch Luke because the Organas really chose Leia. And for whatever reason, I think that's a really fascinating question. And it might become the subject of a Kessel Run one morning.
Right.
I really would like to learn a little bit more about that.
So the main thing as well, like I say, to bear in mind is that, when they decided that Luke would go and live with Owen and Beru, I guess they weren't sure they'd say yes.
No.
So if they take it, Obi-Wan goes with them and says, look, I'll take him. And if he doesn't, if they say, maybe in his head, he's like, if they say no, I'll have to look after him. Because the alternative is he just grows up feral, like some sort of savage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it's in the deleted scenes. It's tucked away. You have to. There's a certain combination you have to do on the menus to see it. But
yeah, left, right, scene. Up.
Just great. Yeah, just great.
Okay, Ian, thank you very much for your question.
Yes, thank you, mate. That was fun.
This next one from Dave Donovan. This is a late addition. Dave did have this slot with a previous question, which had gotten lost somewhere in the show notes.
Oh, okay.
And it was replaced by this one that he sent out today.
Right.
Because it was specifically for the 40th.
Oh.
So this is from Dave Donovan. He says, "Hey lads, question time. Going off an idea Mark had about Luke training Rey for combat got me thinking. She's very powerful in the Force and needs taken in hand, presumably before something happens to her or someone around her, or if Snoke gets hold of her. The Jedi would take children with Force abilities from their families to train them, and presumably they did this with permission. But was it all that benevolent? Were they just trying to keep the Order alive, or were they afraid of a new order rising up against them? Presumably many families said no to the offer and kept their Force-sensitive kids, or there were kids out there that refused to go. What happened to the ones that wouldn't go? Safe to assume over a millennia and in an entire galaxy that would have been many that had refused. They'd grow up Force capable but with no training and probably the ability dormant inside them, like Leia perhaps. Or did some develop their power once it awoke in them like Rey, and they perhaps fell to shadier paths and means of using their ability? It's not something we've ever heard about, really, is it? Interesting to hear your take on it, as always. Happy 40th, and may the Force be with you always. Your pal, Dave." There's some really interesting little points in there to pick over. So what happened to the Force-sensitive children? This is a breakdown. What happened to the Force-sensitive children who didn't go to the Jedi? Were the Jedi afraid of a group rising up or reeing up, as I've typed in there, because my computer skills are second to none? So were they afraid of another group rising up? Or did they train the younglings simply to benefit the Order? What's your position on this, Mr. Wade?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've never thought of it in those terms logistically, but could they just be taking them? Could it be a kind of almost like a conscription arrangement with the kind of Galactic Senate? And it's, if we want the kids, look, write it into law or something, will you? Just put in a little subclause near the bottom that just says we can for the good of the galaxy. Because as far as they're concerned, they're doing, for lack of a better expression, they're doing God's work, aren't they? So they see it as an honor and a tremendous privilege to be part of the Jedi and to serve the will of the Force as they see it.
Mm-hmm.
So they would take, I would think, any steps necessary to make sure that kids had those opportunities. So I don't know that they would have. It's tricky because the more I say it, the more I make them sound like tools. But I do. There may be something to the idea that they didn't let it get that far. That they kind of had it. It was legislated on their behalf as a kind of, what's the word? Like a sort of like a special relationship with the Senate. Yeah. Which is what maybe that's why they're galactic peacekeepers and they're basically Senate police.
There's some lines in The Phantom Menace that sort of alludes to this kind of thing. Like Qui-Gon says, if you were near a core, if you're near a Coruscant, we'd have found him earlier.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, I think that somebody would have turned up and said, if you let that child come with us, they'll have a better life. And they'll be contributing to a bigger thing, a greater thing.
Yeah, there's a possibility that it never came up because parents were so happy to, to sort of. It's like, I don't know what the equivalent would be nowadays. It's like having a kid who wants to do something noble. I don't know what the equivalent would be.
Yeah, there's not a great deal of nobility in the world.
I want to grow up to be a policeman. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make the world a better place, stop bad guys, and that sort of thing. So, like, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? Like, parents aren't going to be.
Yeah, it's like a police commissioner turning up at your front door and saying, "I've seen your kid in the park, and he told another kid to pick up that empty can of Dr. Pepper. We want to make him a policeman." So
it's not. Yeah, not so much that. But what I mean is,
that's a direct one-for-one analog, Rob. I don't want any debate on this. It is
fine.
binary.
So I was looking at it from
Dr. Pepper.
I was looking at it from the other point of view, in the sense that they would, like in the same way, a Jedi might come to your school one day and say, what's really cool, being a Jedi.
Yeah.
So if you're Force sensitive, we want you. And there's a big poster of Qui-Gon's face on it with a cowboy with a big red, white, and blue hat on.
And he's pointing straight into the camera.
He's pointing straight into the camera. And so parents start bringing their kids to the Jedi rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the Jedi get a sort of sense of, people strong in the Force in the local area and that sort of thing. So, but I imagine I kind of envisaged it more of a recruitment thing, but it's more of a parents come to us to see if their kids are Force sensitive because that would be amazing. And it's like, oh, my kid is special,
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually, the more we talk about it, the deeper it seems. It's
and like I say, the more careful I have to be not to make Jedi sound horrendous.
Yeah, but I think that, there's a lot of stuff happening now that I think is starting to frame them in a way where that might be unavoidable.
Maybe.
Because, Luke's decision to end the Jedi might be based on looking back over recent history and thinking, oh, actually, they weren't great. And maybe maybe the few that were great, like Qui-Gon, had constantly been raising his hand saying, we might be getting this wrong a little bit. And they were like, shh, go away. You're scruffy and we don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
That's kind of the impression I'm getting. But I'm certain that there were families out there that distrust the Jedi, were suspicious of their motives, and were their children to show signs of Force sensitivity, they might have thought, we need to keep this child hidden.
Yeah.
And I think there are examples now, even if you just take Darth Maul, for example, there's an example of somebody who was Force sensitive and was missed by the Jedi.
Yeah.
And what's more, was found by the Sith. So it's one of those things where I'm sure that it was half and half, that there were plenty of people that would push a child forward and say, this child's Force sensitive, take them to a better... certainly if they come from the Outer Rim worlds, and that's the best example we've had so far, is Shmi with Anakin sort of saying, you got to go, this is a better life, you got to go, don't worry about me here, I'll be fine, you go and do what's right for you. That's the best example we've got to go on now, of somebody not being seen by the Jedi, being plucked out of obscurity, but unfortunately, that's probably where the best case scenario ends, and because he's too old, it all goes a bit pear-shaped. But that might be the dynamic that's at play. And when they do get missed and plucked out by the Sith, they become Darth Maul or Darth Vader.
Yeah. Interesting.
So there's just one more thing on this, and then we'll move on. The motives of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Is it just to keep the numbers up? Because there's quite a small amount of Jedi in the period that we're familiar with, about 10,000. So are sort of recruiting new Jedi younglings, is it important for them to keep the numbers up? Or is it because they don't want them falling to the dark side? What's their motivation? And where does a character, do you think, like Maz, where does she slot in? Because clearly there's some force sensitivity there.
Yeah.
And maybe even Chirrut. We're seeing these characters now that there seems to be some sort of latent force ability there that may have been, they may have been a potential Jedi if they could have been taken and trained.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they leave? Were they passed over, or were they these examples of people saying no, keep your head down, just stay here, don't get caught up in all that?
Possibly. I mean, the other possibility is that the Jedi were, as much as they wanted to keep the numbers and what's it called? Keep the numbers and sort of, stack their side as high as much as they possibly can. They may have also had, in terms of, they may have had a hard limit in terms of midichlorian count, in which case these people might have been borderline. So borderline, just on the wrong side of capable, and they might have been a bit prescriptive during the times when the numbers were better, so they can be more choosy.
I wonder how many people hate that, or actively hating that right now, as you've said it.
I don't care,
because I would think that sort of sucks the mystical elements out of it.
Yeah, but I mean, we know there's the mystical elements are still there, but they are they have been reduced by the fact that the prequels are a thing. So there's science behind the mysticism. I mean, we accept. It's interesting. We accept the replacement of mysticism with science in our everyday world, but for some reason we like it. We're more willing to go along with it in our fiction, and we resent any attempts to do the opposite.
Yeah, that's very
interesting, isn't it?
It is very interesting. It says a lot about our desire to escape, and our pragmatism sort of trumping that, if you like. Yeah,
exactly. It's we abandon that willingly in a way. That kind of, what's the word?
I think it's a really interesting concept, though, that there might have been a hard ceiling for a qualifier for entry. And I wonder if, as they moved into Clone Wars, whether that changed. If that was a thing, whether that changed, whether they said, we're, running a bit low on, and I'm sure that at some point someone's going to come in and wipe all these kids out. It might be a good idea if we stacked a few.
Yeah.
Got a few out the back to
just relax. Yeah, just relax the criteria a bit. It's like, we're taking, in the same way as, when I went to university, I didn't get my, because it was, by the time I went to university, it was UCAS points. And I didn't get the number they asked for me. But there were not that many people on my course, so they took me anyway.
Right.
It worked out well for them because I got a good mark. And obviously they got a fair bit out of me in terms of, well, in every respect. Both in the monetary and also in the dedicated, hardworking student type.
Of course.
But they relaxed the criteria because they had a gap. They had gaps to fill, and there weren't enough people coming forward to fill them in the direct ways. And so as a result, I got a good one out of it, and so did they. So, sometimes they'd probably be willing to relax it when they don't have such a bevy of these things.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, well, I think that's reasonable. Just quickly going back to the top of Dave's question there, do you know what he's referring to when he said I had an idea about Luke training Rey for combat? Because I put it out in a Kessel Run podcast earlier this week. If you're not a VIP, I do a daily podcast called the TSW Kessel Run. It's about 10 or 15 minutes. And one of the things I was ruminating on this week was the training sequence we see in The Force Awakens of Rey with the lightsaber made me think that Luke was training her specifically in lightsaber combat, where there isn't that element to Luke's training on Dagobah.
No.
And I wondered if Luke was taking a different position over the development of Rey as a potential Jedi, training her to be a little bit more aggressive.
Possibly. The other possibility is that Luke's more pressed for time than Yoda. Because obviously when Yoda's first training Luke, he's of the understanding that Luke's going to stay there as long as it takes.
Yeah.
And obviously he gets surprised because of what happens to Luke when he's having his vision.
Yeah.
So that sort of, up until that point, Yoda's probably thinking, oh, that's cool, we can come to lightsaber training later. Plus Obi-Wan did a little bit of that. He did the sort of the stuff with the remote.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a bit of that, yeah.
He's had a little bit of he's had a bit of light training. Yoda's probably thinking that's probably all right for now. And then Bespin Bespin calls to Luke, and then Yoda's like, oh, bugger.
Yeah.
As he's flying off. He actually doesn't say there is another. He goes, oh, bugger.
Yeah. And then someone just retconned it because obviously
it's
not appropriate for a child's film.
Well, no. Also, it was Dave Prowse doing the accent in the original cut, so they got Frank Oz to come in and do it again because it was just like, this is a bit weird.
Things you didn't
Obviously, some of these things are not true. Try and guess which. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Maybe that should be the return of the Twitter poll. Which of these alternative Star Wars facts are not true?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep an eye on this, I think, closely, because I know that there was a sequence in The Empire Strikes Back initially. There was, because I had a graphic novel of the novelisation that my favourite uncle bought for me when I was a kid.
I can see why it's your favourite.
Oh yeah, of course. And it had a sequence in it where Yoda, who didn't look anything like the Yoda that made it into the movie, so it was an interesting. It was the Marvel Comics adaptation.
Oh, okay.
He had a metal bar that he threw in the air for Luke.
Sorry,
no,
it wasn't the mental.
It wasn't a pub.
He just started beating him.
Yeah. Oh no, I thought you were thinking
he
had a heavy metal themed pub.
Yeah.
No, he had this little metal bar that he threw in the air, and Luke had to swing at it. I think Luke was blindfolded, and Luke cut the bar in half, as I remember.
Right.
And Yoda said, like, if you were a Jedi, that bar would be in 7 pieces.
Yeah.
But that never made it into the movie.
No.
And I thought it was a conscious effort on George's part, or Kersh's part, to sort of take the aggression out of Luke's training. And even the training Obi-Wan gives Luke on the Falcon is very much defensive, isn't it? It's like parry and dodge.
Deflecting things, yeah.
And not really so much as what we're seeing Rey do on that cliff face. I don't know, because I'm not into I don't know much about lightsaber duels or sword fighting, but it looks very much like she's working the form she used against Kylo. There was a lot of very pointed moves in there that seemed like they were directed towards a confrontation rather than defending oneself. But
yeah,
I'm going to keep an eye on that because I think there might be something there. It's interesting. The position Luke might be taking, I find quite interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got. This isn't so much a question as it is a story. From Adam. It is a riddle. Riddle me this. Would you like to take this one, mate? It's a little bit of a lengthy one.
Yeah. So this is Adam Starr, right?
This is from Adam Starr. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is from Adam Starr. Great last podcast, and wanted to share with you a little of my personal experiences with Star Wars in general for the past 40 years. I wonder why you chose this one today.
Yeah.
I saw Star Wars in 1977 at the Empire Leicester Square, and like most children who this film was aimed at, it blew me away. I lived in Grays, Essex, just up the road from Russell Brand. Sorry to hear that. And this film quickly became my obsession and my escape from the very grey place I lived in, and was probably named Grays because of that fact. Nice. That summer I was given for my birthday Luke, 3PO, Leia, Chewie and R2, and an X-Wing. That following Xmas, Han, Kenobi, Darth Jawa. Darth Jawa? That's awesome.
There's a comma in there.
Tusken. I got Jawa again. So maybe two. Maybe
you got two. One vinyl.
Yeah. and a Stormtrooper. To this day I have these beloved figures as my prized possessions. He hasn't got the vinyl one then. Every birthday and Christmas for the next 3 years, my collection grew, adding more playsets, vehicles, and more stormtroopers. Empire was the movie that I know all fans love so much, and the actor Shane Ritchie, EastEnders and family friend, took me to see this film. Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
and
awesome,
again, the figures and vehicles grew in my collection, all packaging cat boxes included. I think I was on the spectrum even back then.
Aren't we all?
Well, yeah, that's the spectrum. I can't remember exactly the year we got VHS, but when we did, my father bought Star Wars and this video was watched. My mother said every day of every month of every year without fail. Wow. Didn't even cycle out like I did with Moonwalker. No, really. Skipping to 19 years old, and moved out of home, and a replacement VHS was bought, and I moved in a flat share with a friend, and a bet was made. Could I watch Star Wars every day for a year? Could I watch it twice a day for a year? Absolutely. To date, it's now well over 1,300 times for A New Hope.
Amazing.
950 plus for Empire, 750 plus for Jedi, TFA 78, and the prequels all under 50 viewings. Rogue One is now in the 40s.
Amazing.
As someone who's suffered with bouts of depression and a marriage breakup, these Lucas movies have completely helped me soothe and pacify, heal and protect me. I studied theology and did a thesis on Joseph Campbell, George Lucas's mentor, and on myths and legends. My Star Wars collection is now one garage, two loft, and nearly 2 rooms full and growing weekly. It's my life outside my children, my hairdressing, and my new, amazing, and very understanding girlfriend. Well, she'd have to be. Talk Star Wars VIPs is a new extended family. Kessel Run shows, podcasts, and Facebook meets keep me in tune and in touch and keep my serotonin levels in harmony. Thank you all so much, whoever you all are, for being at one with me in the Force. Love you all, and may the Force be with you. Adam. Wow.
What a lovely
That's
email, right?
Awesome.
And I did ask Adam if it was okay to include that on the show notes because some of it's of a personal nature, and he was fine with it.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And he said he'd edited that down as well. There were some additional points that he wanted to throw in.
He did it. He did the first draft while drunk, and he was just like, and another thing.
Yeah.
It just went off on one at so many people, just belligerent.
I think this was a wonderful email, real Dave Brightner, and I'm glad he let me put that in the show notes because I think it's really,
for sure,
it's such a heartwarming little story. 1,300 times for A New Hope.
That's insane.
Goodness me, I
can't even begin to relate. No, I think we're still good, dude.
Yeah, we're getting there. I mean, I do put a lot of hours into Star Wars, but
Mark, not being funny, if Adam's enjoying the show and he's seen Star Wars that much, we've got to be doing something right?
Yeah, no, that's true. That is true. That's a good way of looking at it. I'm going to choose to look at it that way from now on.
Well, that's helpful.
I'm not even in double figures on Rogue One yet. I'm ashamed of myself.
I'm up to 4, 5.
Yeah, I'm
somewhere around there.
I watched it this week. I think that might have been my 8th viewing.
Okay. Yeah, I did. We watched it. Obviously, I thought it 3 times at the cinema, and then I watched it. I think twice more since then when it came out in digital. I watched it I watched it in stages though, because obviously I have a commute that's not a full length of film long. Thank goodness. But I did get to watch Return of the Jedi on the trip to Portugal.
Nice.
It was good. I haven't seen it in ages. I love that movie.
No, we need to do our we need to do our Rogue One audio commentary, and then we'll get to Jedi, I think.
So, yeah.
Okay, Adam. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, thank you, mate. Really, really enjoyed that.
We were supposed to meet Adam this week, but that didn't happen. Unfortunately.
Oh no, that's a shame. Well, hopefully we can make that happen soon.
Yes, indeed. Okay, we have another email from a new listener. Well, the first time, a long time listener apparently, but first time emailer from Texas. So from Jim Ford. He says, howdy y'all. I'm not going to do an insulting read of that line. That would be terrible. I've been listening in on your podcast down in Texas, USA. Love your show. You guys are a lot of fun and very thought-provoking. On your recent episode, I heard where Rey's name was originally supposed to be Kira. It got me thinking that Kira and Kylo have a certain ring to it. Could it be that they are twins? Both of them were sent to Uncle Luke for training, but then Luke got a premonition through the Force that Rey needed to be hid away for some unforeseen reason. And so it was Luke who left her on Jakku, like the way you're thinking, sir. It does seem that Kylo, Han, and Leia seem familiar with her, as in Rey, in some way. Just a thought that popped in after hearing y'all discuss the name change. Anyways, love the show, and as always, may the force be with you. Catch you all down the trail. Jim Ford, no relation to you know who.
Henry Ford?
Henry Ford. Exactly. Breakdown, could Rey turn out to be Kira, the twin of Kylo Ren? Have at it, Rob.
I would
There's
be
one
inclined...
glaring reason.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to say no, because Kylo's a kind of adopted name, isn't it? It's not his birth name.
Yeah.
Now, if she's called Bill, or let's see, who else is there? Michael Jackson and Ben. That was
true.
A popular one.
Another good pairing.
Yep.
Kenobi.
Kenobi, yeah, Kenobi and Ben. That would be a bit of a weird one. It's like, why do you stand that way round?
Little Kenobi.
Yeah. I don't see that happening. I do. It's interesting though. I did consider the possibility that they were brother and sister.
Yeah.
Because there's one kind of glaring thing for me that made me think that way, and it was that when Rey says, "I didn't know there was this much green in the whole galaxy," Han looks over at her in a way that says, "I feel bad."
Mm-hmm.
And initially, I thought, maybe she's related. I've since kind of walked it back a little, and I've come to the conclusion that it's not so much that he feels bad because he left her there or because he's responsible, but just because he feels bad because it's a shame.
Yes,
that's where I've ended up.
Yeah, we discussed that quite a few episodes ago about how that look may be more about Han's regret that they spent so much time, spilt so much blood to try and restore some sort of justice, some sort of order to the galaxy.
On Endor, like for example, then?
And there's still children out there growing up alone.
Yeah.
And sad. And I think that is the look on Han's face. It doesn't matter how much they did, it didn't affect Rey's life in the least.
No, and actually, that was wasn't that why Brian Quinn from Impractical Jokers and Tell 'Em Steve Dave was unhappy with Force Awakens, because he said that all of the success they were left with in Jedi meant nothing by the time the Force Awakens began, because it seemed like everybody had been miserable and separated and not seen each other in ages and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, for a start, that's drama, isn't it? And I was aware that was that's something that Q had said. I know that was his position on it, but
I don't know if he still feels that way. It's just at the time he was quoted at the time, so I don't know if
drama,
that's changed.
Though. I mean, without doing that, and it speaks volumes about the galaxy that they left. You know, the legacy of their work was that they left a galaxy to become complacent again, and Leia saw it, and that's why she left
the Republic,
politics,
the Resistance,
exactly, because she could see it, and Han went away because his heart was broken. I think after everything that happened with Ben, so in a way, it's fitting that fixing a galaxy is not the responsibility of three people, as much as they were dancing and clapping their hands on Endor.
Yeah.
It's not the responsibility of three people. It's a communal effort. And when left to their own devices, people will quickly go back to their selfish ways and things will fall apart.
Well, also, what I really liked I haven't read the whole book, and I find the writing style a bit difficult. But one thing I really liked about what Chuck Wendig did with the Aftermath books is that he picked up from... Apart from that, he picked up immediately after Jedi and went to, I think it was Coruscant, and the statue came down and the stormtroopers were deployed, and you realise, of course, nothing's changed anywhere else. Everybody's just happy, but they're still under Imperial subjugation. Yeah. And I thought that was quite clever. Like I say, I find his style a bit jarring in general, but I thought that was really good. I'm willing to give credit where it's due, you know.
Yeah, that's Aftermath, right?
Yeah, that's the first one. Yeah, that picks up in places. That picks up immediately after Jedi. So, and in fact, it's kind of in that montage of celebrating planets. I might be wrong on which one it was, but it's one of the ones that's mentioned. It's one of the ones that's referenced in the montage in Jedi.
Yeah, that's Coruscant when they pull down the.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that one. I think that's right.
That is the statue of Palpatine, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But I don't know if that's the right planet. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if the statue bit's in there. I'm just kind of speculating based on what I think.
Well, I think that there's that little thing with Han. That was only one thing that hinted at Rey being a presence that people expected in some way. Or, certainly Kylo. He has lines of dialogue that allude to the fact that Rey is either known or known of. It's you is one of the things he says. It's very pointed.
That's in the book, isn't it?
Oh, is it in the book?
Yeah, it's not in the film.
Confused.
But I think they're considered canon unless they contradict.
Oh no, they are. They are definitely considered canon.
Yeah.
But the other reason, I mean, there's the name. So within the story, actually within the film, I think it would be very difficult to say that there was any connection between Kira and Kylo.
Yeah.
Especially just because of the alliteration of the names within canon. But narratively, in terms of the filmmaking, that could be a thing.
Yeah, I totally. Like I said, I think the only reason why I don't think it's the case is purely because I think if it was, they would have revealed it during Force Awakens.
Yeah.
It feels like if they've left it too long now.
And I wonder if that was the intention at some point, and somewhere along the line priorities changed, or we know
maybe
Ryan got involved and he requested changes, and he certainly had a hand in establishing the story for Claudia Gray, or with Claudia Gray in Bloodline. So maybe there was some input from outside that led to changes in the story that meant certain people reacted to Rey as if she was one thing, but she was then cognitively reframed for us as another thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But we also don't know what these characters, this is out there, and this isn't really based on anything but an appreciation for
that's
the
never let it stop us before.
It's never stopped us before, and it won't stop me now. There is a chance that all these characters that seem to be aware of Rey have one other connection in common, and that's Luke.
Yeah.
So perhaps Luke has once spoken of a child.
Yeah.
A young girl.
Could be one that he knows, could be one that he's seen in a vision that he doesn't know anything about, where she comes from or anything like that. Could be a lot of things, couldn't it?
He's read about.
Yeah.
And when he's going to these
of course,
temples, he's looking. He and Lor Santeca spent time after Return of the Jedi researching, trying to find the Jedi temples, reading through these documents, these things that he's got in that little tree wall in the trailer for Last Jedi. They're the things that he went to for answers.
Right.
So if he found stories about Rey, if there were writings about Rey, and he shared these with Leia, and he shared these with Han, and perhaps he's had conversations with Ben about, I don't want to say the chosen one or a prophesized one, or this,
just somebody of importance.
This girl.
Yeah. She can be a character of importance without being the chosen one.
Yeah.
Hear that, internet?
So she may be, and she doesn't have to be Kylo's girlfriend either, but she may have been.
No, for sure.
Every time she rang a bell for people, like that look on Han's face could be, is this the girl that Luke was talking about?
Yeah.
If you next time you watch it like that, is every time she crosses paths with someone, and they seem to recognise her, are they recognising her, or are they recognising a story they heard about her?
Okay.
I'll
keep an eye on that.
Did Luke talk to these people about this girl? Is that his, not so much obsession, but is that the thing that he's taken away from his years of research? That at some point, it's my responsibility to develop this girl. And maybe that's what they're seeing, and maybe that's what Kylo's reacting to. Is it really you? You're just a scavenger. Why would you be the person that Luke spoke about,
Yeah.
And for Han, is the thing that Luke told him about this girl was that she'll be like me, Han. She'll come from the backwater. She'll come from nothing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And is that sort of when Han's getting to know her and she says, I couldn't imagine there being this. Is he thinking, oh, God, this is the boy that I met all those years ago. It's happening
Yeah.
again. So are these little pins in the map along the road that are leading people to the conclusion this is the kid that Luke spoke about?
Yeah, this is her.
Yeah. And it may not be a thing where they can just sort of say, yes, she is the one, put her in like one of those little chairs and hoist her up, cover her under our shoulders. It's just that thing where they're thinking, hang on, I've heard this before. This was Luke's tale.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't rule it out because it could go anywhere, couldn't it? Kira and Kylo, that alliteration, maybe at some point on paper that was the plan.
Yeah, I'll tell you what though, something's just occurred to me that would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've talked about how there's a possibility that the second film might be about, you know, both kind of sides playing for Rey's powers.
Yeah.
You imagine how she'd react if she found out from Kylo that Han was her father and he'd killed her. He'd killed him, and he says it as a kind of desperate last move to get her to turn to the dark side, and she goes off on one.
That's a powerful chip to throw in there, isn't it?
There you go. So if he's like,
really good idea.
It's just a thought, but that could be a way to make it work.
Yeah, he has spent a bit of that currency already, the character, by sort of saying, you think of him as your father. Let me tell you, he'd disappoint you. That sort of, he's already kind of played that card a little bit. But
then if he turns around and says, I was keeping just a little bit from you before, and actually I wasn't kidding when I said that you thought of him as a father, and there's a good reason why.
I tell you, while
he was your father,
that could be the line. I mean, somebody did say a while ago that Rey would have the line where she said to Luke, "I am your father," as in the reincarnation.
Yeah,
could you believe that?
Yeah.
But while we were talking, I started thinking that perhaps Luke had discovered a prophecy, and I'm doing inverted commas,
right,
about the rise of another dark force and the one that would come to vanquish it.
Right, okay.
And I wonder if he was thinking Snoke was the dark force that was rising when really it was Ben right under his nose. And he's viewing Rey as the one that will come to vanquish that darkness, which is why he's training her for combat, when really her actual intended mission is to save Kylo.
Okay.
And then everyone gets a little bit of everything they want, don't they? Because people so desperately want for Kylo and Rey to have a relationship, and I think what they actually want is they want some compassion there.
Yeah.
And a true act of love would be for Rey, despite everything that Kylo's done, would be to save Ben Solo.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep coming back to that point because to me that's what works best dramatically for this story as we know it now.
I certainly think it's equally as compelling as any kind of, what's the word? Any kind of less than platonic relationship. I think that what you've just described there is just as compelling, if not more so. So I think that would be a good way of handling it.
I like it as well because it's coming out of a corner where you don't really expect it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way also that it kind of answers a few things really. It makes Luke, doesn't make him weak, which is something I'm concerned about. It doesn't make Luke weak, but it does mean that he's subject to the same failings as his masters.
Yeah.
Both Obi-Wan and Yoda missed what was happening with Anakin. It was happening right in front of them. So if he's guilty, and if there's anything, we've just been speaking about it, based on Q's comments about how, well, if everything's just reset and all falling apart again, what was the point?
Yeah.
It's people guilty of committing the same sins over and over again. And if Luke thought, oh, well, I'll take Ben and I'll train him because Leia wants him to become more like me and less like our father. So I'll train Ben. And then he made the same mistakes. Even though he knew to be on the lookout for them, he made the same errors. It happened right in front of him, the same as it did with Obi-Wan and Yoda. He's committing the same sins as the generation that came before him. Mm-hmm. And then if he's looking at Rey to come in and fight the dark side, the way Yoda and Ben thought he would go and fight the dark side, she needs to vanquish her enemies with compassion the way he did, not with force.
Yeah.
So he could there could be like it's another echo. It's the ring theory, isn't it? It's another go around the story that we've seen before. The rhyming stanza we always talk about, but it's a slightly different version.
It's different enough, isn't it? That
It's different enough to sort of say, well, they're not. Luke didn't really expect it. He didn't have his guard up. It happened right under his nose. You could see that this is why also. This is why I'm not gonna. This is why the Jedi need to end, because the more and more we bring these Force sensitives in and we give them the abilities, they go out there and they do evil stuff in the world with it.
Yeah,
that's why it needs to end, and it shut all this down because we're just arming people to go out there and do evil.
Yeah,
if that's been his experience thus far,
that's fine.
Yeah, Rob just dropped out for a second there, but we were discussing how Luke would be a little gun shy after.
Yes,
training somebody up, giving him the abilities he needs to become a problem.
Yeah, and you can see why he might be. Certainly at the beginning of the film, he might be jaded, and he might be, keen to sort of not give anybody the tools to bring about the destruction of the galaxy.
Yeah.
And so as a result, you can. I think the what I want to see is, I don't really mind them giving nods to the old films in terms of story beats, but I need to have worked hard to make those connections.
Yeah,
that was for me was the Force Awakens thing. I didn't get enough of that. I didn't have to work very hard to tie it to New Hope in terms of story points.
Yes,
it was quite easy. Yes. I think in future films, if it's harder to make that connection, then I won't mind it so much.
Yeah, I think something we need to appreciate, because I feel somewhat the same, but what I appreciate is that I'm a little bit different to your average moviegoer. Mm-hmm. So for an average moviegoer, they might not see that correlation, but we will, because we're steeped in Star Wars.
Yeah.
But Joe Public might not be making those connections. And this next thing, if we're right with what we've been discussing here this evening, if there's any element of truth to that it is, I've said all along, Rey's path's either going to be Luke's or it's going to be Anakin's.
Yeah.
And if they're going to do this thing where it's actually Luke's path and Kylo's was Anakin's path, it might be buried deep enough in the new story not to ring the bells with general audiences. You might have to work a little bit harder to sort of join the dots. Yeah. Even though you and I might not. And certainly now after this conversation, if any of this happens, we're going to go, oh yeah, well there you go. We kind of saw it coming because of the ring, because of the ring theory, because of the rhyming stanza, the poetry of it all. But I really love that. I really love the fact that you can have a generation of people that do everything right, and then the next generation just come along and make the same mistake. I love that as a dramatic tool. Yeah. I think it really works well. And Jim gets speeder bikes in his question as well.
Yes. So a couple of times now.
Jim, hopefully you're familiar enough with what we do to know that we will go very, very wide from your question when we talk these things out. Yes. I'm sorry if we went all over the place. To address your question head on, I think it's if Rey is Kira, then in terms of storytelling for the writers, Kira and Kylo and the alliteration may have been a thing, but we don't really think that there's much of a chance of them being twins. There's the age gap as well, and I don't think that Han and Leia were overt with their recognition of their daughter, if that was the case either. That's another thing, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah, I think it's unlikely now, but that was my initial kind of read of it.
But I hope, Jim, maybe you can, after hearing us ramble on for probably too long about who Rey might be, it'll be interesting to get your take on whether or not you share, certainly my opinion, that she may have been somebody that Luke spoke about in the broadest terms of this thing he's expecting, this promising young woman that's going to come along and be the catch-all solutions to his problem. And if they're the elements that people are recognising,
Yeah.
That's what we're registering as familiarity, when it might just be, hang on, I've heard Luke tell this story before, and this is all starting to come true. I'd be interested to know, Jim, if that's something that works for you. So fire us another line if you think we're getting somewhere with that.
For sure.
I think we're onto something.
Maybe.
And not too soon either. Right in time for a break.
Perfect.
We're going to run off now for a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to have this week's Connor's Corner featuring Leo, which will be read by my more than capable colleague.
Hooray!
We'll be right back. If you'd like to support what we do here at Talk Star Wars, you can do so by becoming a TSW sponsor. For as little as £1 per month, given securely via PayPal, you'll help us keep the lights on here at Talk Star Wars. When you become a TSW sponsor, we will automatically make you a TSW VIP. As a VIP, you'll get access to an exclusive stream of content that provides you with a daily podcast called the TSW Kessel Run, membership to the TSW VIP Facebook group, priority releases of shows such as the TSW Toy Box and TSW Comics. You'll also get priority access to the TSW Feature Com series and weekly Facebook Live and AMA sessions. There are also newsletters and a monthly prize draw. Head to talkstarwars.co.uk/support and become a TSW sponsor today, and the Force will be with you, always.
And we're back. So you've just heard about the TSW VIP program, and one of the people who took advantage of that, who we always hear from after that point, is Connor. So it's time for Connor's Corner featuring Leo. Connor writes thusly. Yay. Everybody drink. Yeah, it's not the. It's the same. It's back to normal. It's not the same, is it?
No.
It was good. It was good, but it was just wasn't there. Hello there. Oh, rather, sorry. Hello there, my friends. Hope everything with you gents is well, and you've had a good week. I'd just like to start off this week's email by expressing my deepest condolences and sympathies to all involved in this week's atrocity in the city of Manchester. I'm sure I speak for all of us in the Commonwealth that they're in our thoughts.
You do indeed, sir.
My question is more of a rebuttal to Mark's Plagueis' Snoke theory. I think you're onto something with that. That's not how rebuttals work. It does indeed have a nice symbiosis to it, and it brings us all back full circle to the Anakin Palpatine dynamic, something old, something new feel to it. I'm all in on that one. It was more what was said about Kylo not being Snoke's endgame. We've heard that Kylo will be wearing Vader's cape and wanting to be more Vader-like. I have to agree with you that was the reason we saw Vader's castle in Rogue One, was foreshadowing it in Episode 8. Snoke seducing Kylo with all the trappings of his all-powerful grandfather, sans that perfect weapon, of course, which he's tried so hard to replicate but can't perfect. Poor baby Kylo. Now hear me out. Plagueis managed to extend his life for an unnaturally long time, and could it be a case of the form he occupies now just being an aging husk that is just vessel for him, and after a while, albeit a long while, it eventually starts to shut down and in some way needs to be rehoused in a much stronger form, human or otherwise? Did he think that the grandson of Anakin was that body for him to occupy, but then realize that he was wrong, and this scavenger girl turns out to be much stronger than the boy he's invested so much of his time grooming for the hostile takeover? And now his plan has taken an unexpected turn, something he didn't see coming as she was unaware of her powers and never was on his radar. Will Snoke be the end of Kylo, seducing Rey and leaving Kylo broken and destitute, a wannabe Sith Lord without a master, and his only choice is rejoining Luke for a chance of redemption of his cold-blooded murder of his own father? Remember, Luke and Kylo both killed their own fathers. I know Luke didn't do it directly, but certainly left Vader in a bad way, then Palpatine zapped him. That didn't help, but he must feel some remorse for his actions. What do you think? Snoke, Rey versus Kylo, Luke? Not necessarily in Episode 8, but a nice finale to this new trilogy. Too far-fetched, maybe, but I'd love your opinion on this one. Sorry this email was so long. You should have seen it before the edit. Thanks, Connor and Leo. Happy 40th birthday, Star Wars. All right. Let me just get in mode.
Announcer voice.
This email was brought to you by Jawa Junkyard. If you've got a wonky gonk, we can fix it. Free restraining bolt with First Order.
I like First Order.
Right. Yeah. See what you did there.
Yeah, well played. Interesting.
No breakdown.
This is quite no breakdown, but this is kind of close to my my theory, isn't it? About how Snoke is just inhabiting bodies and trying to get to the next Force powerful one.
Yeah. What's interesting though is, funnily enough, I was listening back to that bit, and when you said about it was based on something Rob said about Snoke and Plagueis, I cringed a bit because I actually went back after that episode we talked about it and looked for Pablo's exact words.
Yeah.
And he basically said, Plagueis is dead, Palpatine killed him.
Yeah.
So having said that, the what's it called? The inhabiting the body thing would fit nicely.
Yeah.
Especially as it's got Darth Bane elements to it.
Okay.
Because Darth Bane, towards the end of his trilogy book series, was looking to inhabit a body because he was, I don't know, I think in Legends they were kind of alluding to the fact that use of the dark side, because it was far more powerful and sort of more raw energy, your body would kind of decay faster. And yeah, this is why I had the clones of Palpatine in Dark Empire that would sort of be there to sort of take his essence back in again, and then the body would sort of become decrepit, and he'd have to get a new host, or a new physical form. So he was looking to possess Leia's third child, Anakin. So it's interesting that if that's the case, that's kind of made its way back into. If that's made its way back into canon, I'd actually be quite on board with that, because that's quite a nice tie-in to Legends, and I've always liked that the idea that the dark side is more powerful, but you pay the cost of a sort of reduced lifespan, almost like replicants in Blade Runner.
Yes, yeah, it would be an interesting take on Legends, wouldn't it, to try and bring that back in.
Yeah.
To canon through another route, if you like, if they like that sort of element, because Darth Bane's no longer canon, right? That story.
No, it's not. He's still canon, but that story isn't.
The character, yeah, but the story isn't. And it would be an interesting sort of thing for them to cherry pick out and say, let's use this for Snoke. Let's make Snoke like the Plagueis entity. Although what we said about you still kind of rings true. If you play fast and loose with Pablo's words, it still kind of rings true that if Plagueis was done with the Sith, he would go back. Like when Darth Vader was done with the Sith, he went back to Anakin Skywalker. Yeah. And if Darth Sidious was ever done with the Sith, he would go back to being Sheev Palpatine. So whoever Darth Plagueis was could have gone back to being, and that being with Snoke.
Yeah.
So then what Pablo said is true from a certain point of view.
Yes.
Palpatine killed Plagueis, and he did. He destroyed the character. The person, the figure that was Darth Plagueis was destroyed. But perhaps Snoke managed to sneak away and inhabit another form. And that form is Snoke that we see dying. So that was the theory that I'd sort of formed a while ago, and now I'm quite interested in what Connor, not Kylo, what Connor's saying here about how, if you look at it from Snoke's point of view, how he was first targeting Ben Solo, thinking you'll do nicely, a nice powerful Force body to inhabit. If I can just push you a little closer to the dark side, and then this girl turns up and kicks his ass, and he must think, oh, no, hang on, I think I'm going to trade up.
Yeah.
I'll trade up and get the younger, more promising version. That is very interesting.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It does depend on being able to write off the assurances that Pablo has already made.
Yeah.
And obviously whether this story really needs Plagueis to be a part of it, or if it's like what we were discussing earlier when we were going through Jim's question.
Yeah.
If the story really is as simple as Luke's guilty of making a mistake here, and the big bad isn't necessarily that important. It doesn't have to be a legacy character that comes back in.
Yeah.
I'm very deliberately not saying Legends character, because like Plagueis isn't a Legends character, but a legacied character from the prequels. Doesn't have to be one of them coming back in and go, look who's back. It doesn't need to be that. It's the mistake that was made by somebody overconfident maybe, or ignorant, or just off guard. That's the big bad of this piece. And Kylo's just found himself a sponsor in the shape of this other evil doer. But they're really this story may not need that figure to be Plagueis. It may not need it, because that might be misdirection for us.
Yeah.
that the real problems, the real villains, are the ones up close to camera. They're Luke and they're Kylo and they're Rey, and they're all contributing to this thing, themselves, and they don't need the big villain to cause the problem.
Yeah,
but I do like the way you're thinking, Connor, mainly because it's very, very similar to the way I'm thinking. So it's always nice to find like-minded individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. I don't know. Wonky gonks is a great term. That might have to go on a T-shirt.
They're wonky. They're gonky.
Jawa Junkyard. That is definitely going to become a T on Talk Star Wars, I think. Have you got anything else you want to discuss with Connor's question?
No, I think you've kind of covered it, really. Let me think. No, I think that's right. You know, I do. Like I say, I like if they're going to go down a route of bringing something back into Legends. The idea of dark side users looking for bodies to inhabit is something I'd be absolutely fine with seeing that come back, because I quite liked it when it was first there. So that works for me.
Yeah, I do like it, and obviously it's something that struck a chord with me. So it's gone in and become this thing. You know, I have like a holding pattern of headcanon. So I have these things floating around up there that I think that could really work. And if it was to happen, that would become, you know, if The Last Jedi was to give me another piece of evidence to support it, that would get a little bit closer to becoming headcanon for me. But now, especially after our conversation this evening about what may be behind who Rey might be, as in somebody Luke has foreseen the arrival of, and the big bad might be Luke making a mistake by letting Kylo wander too far from the flock. That might be enough. And we may not need that. The whole concept of Sith being able to jump from body to body might be too large an element for a Star Wars movie to tackle right now, without people rolling their eyes and going, "Oh, I'm out."
I don't know. I'm having to be careful with this, because this is an illusion I don't usually make happily, but people got it in Harry Potter, right?
Yeah.
In the first instance of the first movie, rather, he had they had that going on.
The teacher had
he had it in the back of his head.
Yeah, what's his name? The big bad in that is Voldemort. He had
Voldemort.
Sorry, we're not supposed to say that name, are we? Had him living in the back of his head, literally. Yeah, it's kind of creepy and it's kind of weird. And Ryan has said that this film's going to be dark and weird, so there's plenty of room for that to be a thing. Yeah, I just don't know whether it will ask too much of a Star Wars audience to say, "Oh yeah, look, we've never mentioned this ability before in the 6 movies that you've already seen, but guess what? This is a thing." But it's quite safe to sort of say it's the up close and personal failures that will have the ramifications that will echo through this entire trilogy.
Yeah, you know what'd be nice as well, though, is if no dark side user has ever successfully managed it. Yeah. And Snoke thinks he can, and it might be, he's probably wrong, but he thinks he can because he thinks he figured out where they went wrong. And that's why, and there you go, that's why he needs Kylo, because that's why he needs Ben, because Ben's had elements of the light in him. Yeah. Whereas Palpatine's always exclusively been a Sith. He's exclusively been a Sith dude in canon, certainly. Yes. So obviously he's missing that. Maybe he's missing that kind of almost like a conductor.
Well, that was what attracted Snoke to Ben, wasn't it? Yeah. That he had both light and, because he had this balance of both light and dark side ability. That's what attracted Snoke. So yeah, maybe that is a unique qualifying element.
That's what I'm thinking. So maybe maybe that's why he needs Ben, is because Ben has the ability to bridge that connection that normally dark side users can't make. Yeah. Because they're fully invested in the dark side, and there's no, they're not, what's it called? I'll tell you what, actually, something's just popped into my head in a similar way. What if when Snoke says it's time to complete Kylo's training, he's angry because he wasn't expecting Kylo to be able to kill Han.
Oh,
because
right.
because Kylo's obsessed with being like Darth Vader, and Rey's rolled him up in the past with the. So Snoke didn't see the exchange where Rey got him rolled up by saying you'll never be as powerful as Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Obviously, Snoke knows that that's a consideration, but maybe he was maybe he didn't foresee Ben killing Han, and so he's like, oh, hang on, that's going to make it more difficult to do what I was hoping to do. So when he says it's time to complete his training, maybe he's like actually going to give him a bit of a, he's not going to be happy with him. Yeah. He's going to make him suffer for it.
Yeah, I mean that could definitely be a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to some Star Wars news, shall we?
Right.
To celebrate this 40th. Connor, Leo, thank you, gentlemen, for your thoughtful question again this week, and thank you for the T-shirt idea, Wonky Gonks, all the way. All right. So we have only got Last Jedi and Han Solo news this week.
Mm-hmm.
So I have pretty much ignored everything else because there's quite a lot of big stuff.
Yep.
There are definitely elements in here that qualify as spoilers because they've come from the horse's mouth. There are rumours as well, but there are definitely things in there that qualify as spoilers. So if you are spoiler averse, then this is your warning. Please jump off now if you don't want to hear anything from The Last Jedi that is going to spoil things for you.
Okay.
There's nothing that you won't see in Vanity Fair. So it's stuff that Lucasfilm are happy for you to be exposed to now. But if you're averse, then come back and join us next week. Okay, that's plenty of time for people to leave.
Yes.
I really don't. When this stuff gets this sensitive, I don't want to ruin anything for people. So, 4 Vanity Fair covers hit this week. It's been a great week this week.
Yeah, especially for covers.
Oh, these covers are amazing, aren't they? So, if you want to download our show notes, they're downloadable from the description of the podcast. Certainly from talkstarwars.co.uk, they're hyperlinked in there. I know some of the podcatchers don't have hyperlinks in their show descriptions, but you can get them off the website. So 4 covers, and they're each in the show notes. We've got Rey and Luke on one. What's being touted as the dark side on another, and that's Captain Phasma.
Yep.
Kylo Ren and General Hux. So Gwendolyn Christie without the Phasma helmet, Adam Driver without the Kylo Ren helmet, and Donald Gleason with wicked sideburns and very, very slick hair.
Oh, yes.
And then we've got our new Resistance heroes on another cover, Poe, Finn and Rose, and BB-8, of course.
Yeah.
And my favourite cover is Carrie Fisher on her own. General Leia looking just breathtaking. What do you make of these covers, Rob?
Oh, they're brilliant. One thing I'm interested in is I wonder. I know because they did like a sort of a big shot, didn't they, of Leia with Poe, Finn, and Rose.
Yes.
I wonder whether Poe would have been alongside Leia if not for the events of December.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe they took multiple photos, and that's the one they went for in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because she was very close to them in that expanded.
Yes,
shot.
And also, like I say, there's good possibility they took multiple different shots.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether that's the case or not. I'm just kind of speculating wildly.
I definitely think that their paths are pretty closely tied in this movie from what I'm hearing. Every time I hear Poe referenced, it's with Leia.
Yeah.
Or on the ship that Leia's on, or in conflict with Leia.
Yeah.
Those two characters seem to be inextricably linked at this point. And I put a Kessel Run out this morning where I sort of mentioned what Leia and Poe's connection might be as we move forward.
I didn't catch that one.
We'll go through it at some point. I think as we go through these bullet points on the show notes. I think we'll probably hit on those couple of bits. So the day or 2 days after these cover photos hit, the cover story hit by David Camp.
Yes.
Which was a fantastic read, a really great article. Lots in there that can be read and reread in many ways, I think.
Yes. We know this.
Yeah.
The chat me and you had.
Yeah, here's a couple of bits in these bullet points. And so John Boyega has been updating. Oh, this was from EW, so this was earlier in the week, I think. John Boyega has been updating EW on Finn's condition in The Last Jedi.
Okay.
Suggests he might have technical assistance in getting back on his feet.
Okay.
It also reveals a little about his mission with Rose and how their mission is to try and secure help for the Resistance. So I've also linked out to the EW article here so people can have a read. So I did think this was quite interesting because he went into quite a lot of detail about sort of the way the body is affected by a lightsaber strike. And now once the lightsaber goes in, it continues to kill the skin and the cells even after. So they stuff Finn in a Bacta suit, which helps him heal. Yeah. But he said he seemed to imply that there might be some sort of technology used in helping Finn get back to being mobile. So I don't know if maybe there's some bionics at play.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I mean, it could either be, for lack of a better expression, a wheelchair, a Star Wars equivalent of a wheelchair, like a hover chair or something, or it could be some sort of like mechanical leg sort of calipers.
Yeah,
a bit like Forrest Gump, but obviously not play for laughs.
Finn Gump. You can't really see his legs on this cover.
I think it could be deliberate.
Yeah, it could be.
Could be, the fact that he's, and also, obviously, even if we see in the trailer he's running around, he might still have stuff CG'd in.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
It's hard to say for sure, but that would make sense, I think. Nobody, I think, was expecting him to come out of it looking in good shape. Everybody knows he's been through something particularly serious. Yeah, because he wasn't conscious by the end of the movie.
They do Star Wars has got a history of sort of giving characters these hideous injuries and then just have them, by the next film, just get on with it.
Oh, cool. Hey, guys, how's it going?
Yeah, thinking about Luke with his hand and Anakin with his arm. There's all those things, they just sort of take it and then move on, don't they?
Yeah.
Which is cool, I suppose. That moment serves a purpose in the story and then you move on to the next. So leaving that character the way he was at the end of The Force Awakens, it seems like a bit of a leap to just sort of in the first act of The Last Jedi say, no, he's fine. He's had time to power up.
I think he'd be coming back in the second or third act, personally.
Yeah, I think you're right. That canister is in.
Yeah, I think the canister is where he's being wheeled to somewhere safe. To be interesting, wouldn't it? Because that would almost imply that the sort of attack we're seeing on the Resistance base might be really early on.
Yeah,
it would have to be, wouldn't it? If he's being sort of evacuated.
Yeah, either the base or the ship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It could be a ship. It probably is a ship because that's where Poe is running around to, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but, could be.
Yeah.
So he also mentions the mission that he's on with Rose. That they're out there trying to get help for the Resistance because the Resistance are struggling a little bit. So I would assume that it means that they've been chased out of that base, much the same way as the Rebellion was chased off of Yavin 4 between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
So Finn and Rose have gone off to try and secure help. Now this is where they cross paths with the Benicio del Toro character. And I'm not clear at this point whether he's who they were looking for or he's just who they've found on their way to the person they're looking for.
Yeah.
But he has been, well, we're going to get to him in a minute because some interesting stuff that's come out about that character this week. So we'll get there in a minute. But one thing that did come out was a description about Rose. We know from Celebration that Rose is a mechanic within the Resistance. She now has a full name. She's Rose Tico. I'm going with Tico instead of Tycho.
Yeah, that looks right.
And she has a sister also named Paige in the film. Paige is a gunner,
right,
in the movie, and I'm wondering if something happens to Paige, to propel Rose onto her mission.
Yeah,
because Paige, being a gunner, seems a much more active character than Rose is a mechanic. And if something happens to Paige, it could pull Rose into
during
a more active
space battle, perhaps.
Très possible.
Yes.
So, first act space battle, maybe. So,
maybe.
Yeah, that sounds quite interesting. I think Paige shares a lot of screen time with Poe. I think their scenes are somewhat connected.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting as well. I'm glad Rose gets a full name. And I hear also that she gets a lot more screen time than any of the other characters.
Okay.
Which is very interesting. Suggesting she might bridge a couple of adventures. Like if Luke and Rey are off on this side of the film, getting maybe a third, and then Poe and Leia are here getting a third, maybe Rose is involved in that, and then she gets a third
multiple
of the story.
ones.
Yeah.
I see.
Two-thirds of the action for herself.
That seems like an odd choice to go with a
new one
rather than one of the ones that people are actually actively clamoring for.
Yeah, I think it might be they're trying to preserve the dynamic.
Okay.
Like the dynamic we had in The Force Awakens of Finn and Rey.
Yeah.
Maybe they're trying to recreate that, but you also need to have Rey away doing her training with Luke. So to throw Rose in keeps the energy the same with her, like with the capable female, and then Finn just kind of bumbling and bouncing off of stuff on his way to being the hero.
Yeah.
You preserve that dynamic. So maybe there's a bit of that.
Quite possibly.
She seems great as well. I really like Kelly Marie Tran. She's really bubbly.
I didn't get a chance to catch her at the thing, so I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. She's really lovely, and she seems so thrilled to just be a part of this thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like they did back in The Force Awakens.
Yeah, I'd be in her if I was in her position. I'm sure I would be too.
Yeah. Okay, you ready to get into some of this Vanity Fair editorial then?
Go for it.
Loads of stuff here. So, Vanity Fair, as I said, ran this piece by David Kemp. It was the cover article, and a few bits popped out of that. A few bits that cannot be taken for granted. Like this thing, Luke is living in a Jedi village on Arc 2 with an indigenous caretaker race.
Okay.
We'd always kind of assumed that he was on his own, but I'm assuming that this caretaker race are the Porks, which are the little creatures based on the Puffins.
Okay.
That live on Skellig Michael Island, and I'm wondering if this might sort of explain some of the paraphernalia we saw scattered around in those frames in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
You know, we watched Rey climb the Jedi steps and she was moving around. There's all these bits and pieces hanging around. Also, Rian Johnson commented that the caretaker race, who we assume are the Porgs, are definitely not Ewoks.
Yeah.
No, we never expected them to actually be Ewoks. But I think what he's saying is they're not going to be helpful, friendly, furry creatures.
They're not going to necessarily be cutesy.
No, I think they're going to be quite aggressive. And this might be why Luke's got what they're calling a lightning rod, which is like a little electronic prod.
Yeah.
So that he can chase them off when they get too close. That sounded like a really interesting sort of texture to add to the place that Luke is calling home. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Luke will train Rey also, but Rian Johnson said don't expect it to be like the training sequence in Empire. So it'll be very different from the way Yoda trained Luke, which brings me back to what we spoke about earlier, that Rey is being trained as a combatant by Luke more than she's being trained as a Jedi.
Yeah.
She's being trained to fight.
Let's say it might be that he's
reading.
feeling the pressure of time more than Yoda and Obi-Wan thought they did.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting take, and that's straight from Rian Johnson as well, that the training sequences will be very different. Then we get news about Benicio del Toro's character, and I really like what I'm hearing here.
Okay.
He will be unnamed in the movie. People won't use his name.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't think they mentioned Boba Fett's name, did they?
I don't know.
I don't think they mentioned him in Empire Strikes Back. He was unnamed.
He wasn't mentioned. He wasn't mentioned by name, was he? They were all they were just bounty hunters.
Yeah, the first time we heard Boba Fett was in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. So he could just be referred to as you need a slicer. Are you the slicer?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. They're calling him DJ. The storytellers are calling him DJ at this point in time.
Yeah.
Sort of behind the scenes, even though his name will never be uttered in the film.
Okay.
And Rian Johnson says you will know why he's referred to as DJ when you see the movie.
Mm.
So that's very cryptic. We're told that he will be a shady character with unclear allegiances, which reminds me of Lando.
Yeah.
Which made me think that maybe DJ meant Don Juan, and he was going to be some sort of
Lothario character.
Lothario, yeah.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
Looking at him, I don't get that vibe. There is a wonderful photograph of Benicio del Toro in costume in this magazine taken by Anne Leibovitz.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like a Lothario.
He looks like he might think he is, though.
Yeah, he looks like a Scruffario, if that's such a thing. But then Han was that.
Yeah, exactly. There's no reason. He definitely looks like somebody who thinks that
he's the ladies' man.
He fancies himself, you know.
He hasn't got the game that Lando had. He wasn't quite as put together as Lando. But he's very much like that Han sort of aesthetic where he's got other priorities rather than making sure that his hair's prettified or he's cleanly shaven.
Mm-hmm.
I do like this. DJ is very cryptic. I've played with a lot of things, like Don Juan seems to make a lot of sense to me. And I think it's left field enough as well to work as a cryptic sort of trail of breadcrumbs from Rian Johnson, whereas Dark Jedi was another option that I threw around. It just doesn't seem to fit.
There's no, considering the fuss they're making about Grey Jedi, I think they wouldn't call them Dark Jedi.
No.
They might consider themselves like Fallen Jedi,
that
sort of thing. They might look at it from that point of view, but I don't think that it would work the other way around.
No, but someone also pointed out that he's got a scar on his cheek in a similar place to Ezra. I'm not sure if that's someone trying to create a meme. But I don't think there's anything to that.
We talked about that. It did the rounds a few months ago. I think
we spoke about it because it was something that you need to table and examine. You need to consider whether or not it works, whether the numbers work. I don't think they work very well.
No, especially as if he is a slicer. I don't think there's any. There doesn't seem to be any upside to being a Jedi for that.
No,
like the whole thing of like the people who are Force sensitive, whether Jedi or whatever, they always go into something where the Force is a boon.
Yes,
but if you're just slicing computers,
it's like the antithesis, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't really fit.
No, so I think Don Juan fits pretty well, and I'm willing to go with that now until we learn otherwise. I think that kind of fits the archetype at play here.
Yeah.
So here's a contentious one. So there may be a third act reunion for Luke and Leia. This was based on a comment from Oscar Isaac in his not really an interview, but there's a whole section of this article that's dedicated to Mark Hamill and to the character of Luke Skywalker, and this was a comment made by Oscar Isaac that related to how very late in the film he sees what he said was the band come back together and have them deliver the goods, whereas you would think perhaps they wouldn't be able to. And he was speaking specifically of Mark, but like I say, it was in the Mark section of the piece, which is somewhat unsurprising. But what do you think? Is there a chance that we might see Luke and Leia get back together in The later part of this movie?
I don't know. I know that because they're in this photo together in costume on set, that's the kind of the overwhelming feeling. But I don't necessarily think that photo, the photo and the sort of overall piece, I don't get the impression that that's a lock. It feels to me like the kind of thing where they could be both on set recording in different places, and they could have called one into the room to get a photo together because it would make a great photo.
Yeah, true.
So they could be recording, I don't know, the inside of a hut in that could be Pinewood. I don't know I don't know where that is. But let's say for argument's sake it's Pinewood, right? Yep. So they have a set in Pinewood that's the inside of a Resistance ship, which is where Leia and Poe are. But they also have a set elsewhere in the building or in the area that's a hut on Arc 2 where Mark and Daisy Ridley are. So they go, right, everybody's in costume. There's somebody here in Vanity Fair taking photos. Just pop through once you've finished, and they'll take photos of everybody together. And you'll not only make for a great photo, because that photo of the two of them makes for a wonderful photo together, but it will also misdirect.
Yeah. Yeah, because they certainly wouldn't want the other option to be true. They certainly wouldn't want that photograph to give stuff away.
No, but it also they wouldn't want it to definitively rule anything out either.
No. I think there was another photograph as well taken by Oscar Isaac on set.
Yeah.
Of them in sort of director's chairs with their costumes and I think they might have been wearing their black robes. They used the black robes to sort of mask their costume, their wardrobe.
Yeah.
I think that got a lot of tongues wagging at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a possibility that is what is leading people to think, oh, yeah, there's something to this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it may be, there may be, it may be that there's a third act reunion. There may be, I don't know. I mean, it could even be like one sees a hologram of the other one, and they bring them in to sort of fill the space, and then they use effects to sort of make it look hologrammy after in post production. So actually, they've still got a real actor there, to react to. I don't know how they did it in New Hope. Obviously, they didn't have Carrie Fisher. Like, right now, go shrink down to a tiny size.
Yeah, she did a lot of that. She did that twice.
Shrunk down to tiny size? I thought you meant shrunk down to tiny size.
No, she only did that once, and she never did get back from that. That's
she's not. She was not at all. Bless her.
She was 6 foot when she started that film, and then
I believe it.
She
4'11" by the end.
Yeah, she recorded that video of her doing the speech to Obi-Wan without the hood at first.
Yeah, you can tell. You can tell because bits of it are bits of what's it called? The bits of the video are obviously not the same.
Yeah, and there's they found that when they did the chroma key, she disappeared. Her hair disappeared into the blue screen, and she looked like Yul Brynner. So they redid it with the hood up so that you got more definition, which I thought was fantastic. Which is why she remembered that passage for such a long time. I was wondering if this, if they did get everyone back together at the end, are they getting back together because they're trying to sort of steel themselves for the next movie? Get back,
maybe
recoup and double down their resolve and get ready for whatever faces them in the next film. Because
was there a picture of Daisy with the two of them?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Because it could be that maybe episode 8 ends with them having to go and rescue her, and episode 9 is the beginning. The beginning of episode 9 is a rescue.
Yes, yeah.
So he's had to go back to them, cap in hand, saying, "Look, I need help."
Oops.
But yeah, he's probably think like, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to burden them with my failure and all that. But then he's like, "Look, I cannot do this myself."
That was a particularly high-pitched speeder bike. It just flew
by. It was rather, wasn't it? Yeah. I think it had an Ewok on it.
It sounded very, very otherworldly, that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so there may or may not be a reunion in the third act. There's compelling reasons why there will be and compelling reasons why this is nothing. But
basically, yeah, there's a perfectly reasonable chance that it's either at this point. Let me just have a look at these. I'm just having a quick skim through these photos just to see if I can find one with Daisy and.
Yep, you have a sift through, and I'll
there's
just
Daisy
move on.
There's Daisy and Mark. There's Daisy and Mark. There's Carrie and Mark. Carrie and Mark again. Laura Dern.
Kylo. Are you talking about the photos that made it into Vanity Fair?
Yeah.
She's not with them in that.
No. She doesn't appear in any of them. So it makes me wonder if her and Leia don't get a scene together.
Mm.
So maybe, like I say, maybe he's spending the end of the film coming to Leia saying, "Look, I can't do this by myself. I thought I could, but I can't."
Yeah. What if instead of anything negative happening to Rey, perhaps she heads off on her own?
Oh, that's possible, yeah.
And that's the way it's left. Luke going back saying, she's gone, I couldn't stop her, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
That might weaken him a little bit, but, we shall see. So there's talk also from Kathy Kennedy about how Episode 9 was going to be a very Leia-focused story.
Okay.
Which wasn't that's not the exact wording of what she said. Basically, the story goes that Carrie had spoken to Kathy Kennedy after completing The Last Jedi. And she'd had such a blast on it that she said, I really hope I'm centre stage in the next one.
Yeah.
Because Harrison got centre stage in 7.
Yep.
Mark gets centre stage in The Last Jedi. I would like to get centre stage in Episode 9. And Kathy Kennedy, in this article, basically says, and she would have been.
Yeah.
Now, that's upset a lot of people. And it formed a major part of the podcast I put out this morning.
Okay.
Was about how just because people are starting to panic, to be fair. They're panicking that 9 is at risk now because it was all built around Leia, and now with Carrie's passing, they're going to have to change it, and how terrible that might be.
Right.
I think if you're going to draw comfort from anything at this point, you need to draw comfort from the fact that the character of Leia is solely there to service the story. Like all characters in good fiction,
right?
They're only there to service the story. So the story elements that Carrie's character was responsible for could be moved to one or many other characters.
True.
And one of the things I put out in this morning's Kessel Run was it could realistically go to Poe. Because the character, when you step back from it, the character of interest here is the leader of the Resistance. And if something was to happen to Leia, Poe could become the leader of the Resistance, and then
or what's her name? Laura Dern's character,
Holdall.
She's Vice
Admiral Holdall. I hear that her and Leia clash,
but then that might be
ideologies.
The events of but that also might be the events of 8 make her think, you know what? There's more important things than us getting along.
I'm hearing what I've heard so far sets her up as more of an antagonist to me.
Okay.
And I hear that her and Poe are at odds at certain points about actions that should be taken. So she sounds to me to be a lot more of an antagonist within the Resistance than somebody that could succeed Leia.
Yeah.
My gut feeling is that Leia's story responsibilities will pass to Poe. And that will be the story that's told.
The thing to keep in mind about this is how quickly we forget that a couple of months ago, Todd Fisher came out and said she's in Episode 9, and Kathleen Kennedy said, we don't have a script for that yet.
Yeah.
So, that, I think that to me, that statement almost feels like just a reassurance that, she was always going to be an important part of the plan. Maybe not that they build the film around her in the literal sense, but that she was always going to be an important part of what Episode 9 involved in terms of story, in terms of what the story, in terms of where the story went. She was going to be either involved or it was going to tie into her heavily.
Yeah.
So I think that we shouldn't panic because we've got no real need to yet, because we don't, like I say, we don't even know if this has been the first draft. No,
the film, just to this last bullet point we'll use up now, the film starts shooting in January next year. So they've got plenty of time now to put together a robust script. They certainly had some story outline.
Yeah.
For how to move forward, because I know Ryan has had a big part in sort of piecing together this middle chapter, and I think he went back and he had an influence on JJ and the way The Force Awakens played out.
Yeah,
I can't for 1 second believe that Ryan hasn't got ideas about what happens to these characters after his film, so they've at least got that to work with. Yeah, Todd Fisher jumped the gun when he said that Carrie would be in 9. I think he was possibly hoping that if they all gave their blessing and support, that it would make it a thing, so that Carrie would complete her legacy. I don't think there was anything nefarious there. I don't think Todd Fisher ever thought, "Give me the money, give me the money."
Of course not.
I don't think there was any of that.
I think he got the wrong end of the stick.
I just think he wanted to be so supportive of Lucasfilm and say, yes, you can use Carrie's likeness.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't feel right for them, which is why Kathy shut it down, I think, in her own inimitable way of being the boss. She just come out and, in a very classy and succinct way, said no. I know that I'm not a big fan of her having done that, but I'm a big fan of the way she did it. My issue with it is that I just don't want to know that Leia's not going to be in that film until I sit and watch that film.
Because it makes you think that,
Yeah, but doing what we do, there's no...
For it.
That I gave up those privileges doing this. I don't have the right. I don't have the right to ignorance anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, many people are upset that this might threaten Leia's story in the next movie, but I don't think you should. The story will still play out. It will just be other people delivering her responsibilities. And the last piece on The Last Jedi, the last thing to be confirmed is that Canto Bight is in fact the planet we've been speaking about, which proves that Jason over at Making Star Wars knows his stuff and he really is doing sterling work.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't use Jason as a reference if I didn't have complete and utter confidence in his reporting. But he'd been saying for a long time, for weeks and weeks now, that it was Canto Bight. It's a casino planet that Rian Johnson describes as being very much like Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
And the aesthetic they chose, this sort of opulence and the wealth, the Playboy lifestyles, it was all very deliberate to offer up something opposed to what we know traditionally as a Star Wars world, which is a dusty outer rim, impoverished backdrop.
Much in the same way as Cloud City contrasted with Hoth and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. There are some... I've put a link in there to the article right next to this Canto Bight piece. And you can see some photographs of Neil Scanlon's menagerie of alien makeup. There's some great stuff in there. Not a lot of familiar aliens. So it's not servicing some of the things we've been saying we want for a long time. We want more Gran and more Weequay and more...
it may be a bigger scene. There may be a bigger scene with some of that stuff in there, though, in the actual film.
I hope so.
Obviously, you can only get so much in a space in a Vanity Fair thing, whereas obviously with a film, you can pan right back and show all sorts of stuff.
Just give me a Rhodian.
Okay.
You don't have to do much more. Just plop a Rhodian in there and I'd be happy.
Yeah.
But there isn't a lot of that. But, I think we've said this before, maybe those characters gravitate out to the outer rim and these other human and near-human species, they come in to the core because they're more capable potentially.
Yeah.
But that's all very interesting. So follow that link out and you'll see the article in all its glory. It's well worth your time and the images are mouth-watering.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Last Jedi. I can't remember if we spoke about this while we were recording, but Kathy Kennedy has said today that June they'll be making a decision over the third Star Wars story movie that's coming out in 2020.
Okay.
That was on Facebook this evening as we'd started recording, which, as you rightly said, Rob, earlier, gives them a chance to make an announcement at D23 in July.
Yeah.
If they get all their ducks in a row by mid-July, they have the stage then
Yes.
to make an announcement. So,
indeed,
fingers crossed for the Obi-Wan movie.
Yeah.
But
hopefully.
now on to the second Star Wars story movie, Han Solo. So, in the show notes again, there's a handful of images. There were a lot of images that leaked from the set of, I think it was at Fawley Power Station.
Yep.
These images were taken last week. So Han Solo is currently filming at Fawley Power Station. Seems to be an awful lot of stunt work going on there. Some cars, some racing. There's an Imperial checkpoint that has been built. Lots and lots of these bumper cars, these Emley's Nest bumper cars, racing cars. There's an image of Alden Ehrenreich. Let's start with the image of Alden Ehrenreich as Han. The first time we've seen him in costume. What do you make of that?
He looks totally the part.
It's the business, isn't it?
It's great. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's looking a little bit beat up.
Yep.
Very, very dirty. And I can't quite make out if he's got the scar on his chin, but he's certainly looking a little bit worse for wear there. He's got the big hair, the big 70s hair. And the black robe that he's wearing is just the shroud that they wear to cover their wardrobe. That's not actually a part of his costume. I think you could tell by the way that what he's wearing underneath it is really weathered, and that black thing he's wearing is crispy clean. So he is he's just trying to hide his actual costume there, which appears to be a grey vest over a black shirt. So there's the contrast with what we see him in A New Hope, which is the other way around. And then there's what appears to be his race car, or his bumper car. This purple, almost looks like a Cadillac.
Yeah.
Now, I've been working on a theory,
Right.
that Han is a racer of like a hot rod, kind of illegal races or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's where he's found, and that leads to his career as a smuggler. And the reason I'm talking about that, I don't know if you've listened to Tumbling Saber yet this week, but Carl hits a similar couple of points to me. Hot rods grew out of smuggling during Prohibition time. People kind of worked on cars and made them faster so they could run their contraband over state lines and things like that. So hot rods and rat rods kind of grew out of that whole dynamic.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting if that's what Han becomes a smuggler, and if it'd be interesting if his roots are in hot rod racing. And it also makes Han very much like George Lucas, because that's what George Lucas did. He used to race cars and was a mechanic on a race team in his youth. And I think that's kind of nice that you call something back to sort of George in that way and tie Han's origins to George's origins as this gearhead. What do you think of these designs, Rob?
I think they're great. They kind of, they speak to, like you say, that kind of Modesto lifestyle that George Lucas kind of grew up with.
And made
and those
famous.
kind of old-looking car shapes, like junky-looking vehicles, and it all plays into that kind of original trilogy sheen.
Yeah,
it's great. I think it's bang on.
Yeah, I know that's an aesthetic that George really loved, especially when it came to cars, because he used to drive this old Fiat when he was a kid, and he said he'd much rather the generation he came from were like the make good and mend sort of generation. So the cars that they had were the cars that they found rusted out with no wheels out the back of a barn somewhere that had plants growing out of it.
Yeah.
And someone would say, "Oh, you want a car? There it is there." And that's what they had to do. That to take those things, they had to breathe life into them and bring these things back. That's why Star Wars has the aesthetic that it's got, because that was the generation he grew up in, where you just took something old and made something new from it.
Yeah.
And you breathe new life into it, and you give it the TLC it needs to become something formidable. And that made its way into American Graffiti. John Milner's car in American Graffiti was one of those things where you could quite readily see that sort of rotting in his grandma's garden, and then he brings it back to life and makes it the hottest car on the street. And this looks like that might be what's going on here with Han. That this car that he's rocking around in now, I expect the wheels to be CG'd out. By the way,
yeah, of course, yeah.
I think this sort of thing might be the precursor to the Falcon. This is the thing that he spent all his time and energy and every penny on getting it up to scratch. It's a lovely thing. I really like it.
Yeah, I think that's great. The other option is he gets in trouble while he's doing that, and then he's kind of, spots it. What's it called?
This is very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, he gets in trouble and he has to sort of bail himself out, and he gets, as a result, like you say, he gets spotted and kind of that sort of thing.
Something like the first Fast and the Furious was like that, wasn't it? Where the guy, where Paul Walker's character, I think, loses the race, and he owes Vin Diesel's character a car. So maybe Han gets in deep, or gets out of his depth with Beckett or something over these races, and has to work off his debt. That could be interesting. So there's a link in there to the additional photographs. I think there's some video on making Star Wars to check out as well. But a spy cam, someone down there. Certainly some drone shots, I think, or either drone shots or Google Earth shot of Fawley Power Station.
Yeah.
This is all just before they pack up, I think, and move off to the Canaries to do additional shooting. But this is looking great, and I'm thrilled that we finally get a look at Alden in character. Yeah. The interesting thing is that I saw in the Vanity Fair shoot that it's. I meant to mention this earlier and the only reason I mention it now is obviously because he goes alongside Han. Chewbacca is played by Eunice Sawamoto now.
Yes.
In the shoot in Vanity Fair, no mention of Peter at all.
Interesting.
So I think that we've moved into an era where Chewie will no longer be Peter Mayhew, which is kind of sad.
It is, but I do. It's one of those situations where you can understand it because the alternative is just he's not a well man.
Very limited character, especially now in this Han Solo movie, where a character is going to be similar to the one we met in A New Hope, which was played by a much younger man, sort of running around freely and not limited in any way. And Peter, sadly, is very limited by his physical condition.
Yeah, exactly.
Sad stuff, but I think Eunice is going to do a good job. I was impressed by what he did in Force Awakens, so can't wait to see him in this movie, and obviously what he pulls out of the hat in The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. That's all we've got this week. Like I say, I ignored everything else in favour of these two, The Last Jedi and Han Solo. I think it might be like that for a while now, because there's going to be a lot more going on here than with anything else. So, do you think there's anything we need to throw in here before we wrap up, Rob?
I don't know. I think that kind of covers it, doesn't it? Oh, there is one thing actually, really quick. Did you see that there's a discussion? I don't know about a big discussion, but there's a discussion going on about the marketing referring to the Skywalker lightsaber as Rey's.
Yes, yeah.
So Pablo Hidalgo had something to say on this. He said, that because it calls to her now, that's enough to kind of make the transition. And also he said that neither Anakin nor Luke was using it, which I quite enjoyed.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with it being referred to as Rey. It's going to take me a while to get out of the habit of calling it the Skywalker lightsaber.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, you're always going to find that it's going to take time because you're so used to calling it something. You're always going to struggle to adjust to a new name. It's going to take time regardless. So it will take a little time to adjust, but I'm sure we'll get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I'm glad you brought that up actually, because it did slip past me a little bit, but I was aware that Pablo had made a comment. But yeah, I don't mind, unless you could sort of say that he's a bit naive, because people will draw a line between that and Rey being a Skywalker.
Yeah. What's interesting as well is that was on. I found that on Star Wars Newsnet, and on there they also have the answer to the question for the latest toy box competition.
Do they? Yeah, don't give too much away.
No, I'm not going to. I've told them where to find it. It's up to them.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. I might enter that myself. Can I win? I'm not sure I can.
No, if I can't win VIP stuff, even though I pay in, I know.
Hoisted by my own petard.
I've made my peace with it, but at the same time, it doesn't mean I forget.
Yeah, it's very true. All right, let's get out of here. Thanks very much for joining us again this week, everybody. You're always more than welcome. Don't forget to head over to iTunes and leave us that 5-star review. You can take advantage of our Ron Burgundy guarantee. So whatever you write in a 5-star review, I or one of my colleagues, Steve, will read, as long as it is clean. So if you want to promote something you're doing, like a blog or a podcast, that will be the place to do it. Also, you can email us your questions and comments at talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. That's talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to one of us, or all of us, on our social networks at Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, to name but a few. We're even on Tumblr. With that said, Rob, where can people find you between shows?
So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RobWadeVision, and you can catch all the other stuff I do that's not Star Wars related on emotionally14.com, and also by searching Emotionally14 on Twitter, Facebook, and iTunes.
Nicely done, sir. You can find Steve by searching Wild About Nature on YouTube or Twitter, and Paul is at moviescorenews.com.
Yep.
And at moviescorenews on Twitter. You'll find everything I do at talkstarwars.co.uk. And I'm on Twitter at talkstarwars. Check out Mark Airy's new daily podcast he's doing. You'll find that in the Toy Box Facebook group. It's called the Toy Run, the TSW Toy Run. And he does sort of 10 or 15 minutes every day about toy news. That man knows everything.
Oh,
there is
this
to
guy's
know
a genius when it comes to
toys.
this stuff.
It's
absolutely awesome.
Certainly impressive. And definitely whets my appetite. I've been following that Vectis thing. That there was an auction today.
Oh, man,
for the 40th, and that Jawa was supposed to go. There was a vinyl cape Jawa supposed to go for somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000. Took 21,600. And we're not talking Republic credits because they are no good here.
No, this is true.
That's money.
Yeah, that
is money.
Yeah, it really is impressive. Like how people can spend that sort of money on it is beyond me personally, but I know there are people who are that invested in it, and more power to them.
Yeah, I just hope that appreciates in value. Otherwise, you're going to be doing some seriously kicking your own arse, aren't you?
Yeah, quite so.
Okay, everyone. Don't forget to check out the Commonwealth and all the other wonderful shows that are over there. You're going to hear a promo spot for that in a second. And today being the 40th anniversary of Star Wars, we did a draw and gave away a Hasbro 6-inch Black Series Luke Skywalker X-Wing Pilot Anniversary Edition, the exclusive from Star Wars Celebration 2017. So if you'd like to be in with a shout of winning one of our other wonderful prizes that we're going to be giving away over the next couple of months, sign up to become a TSW sponsor at talkstarwars.co.uk/support, and we will automatically make you a VIP, and you'll be entered into every month's draw. And not only that, you'll get to take part in Facebook Lives, AMAs, all sorts of wonderful stuff, and you'll get access to our daily podcast.
Yes, indeed.
It's all good fun, and all for as little as £1. Right, that's us done. I am so tired.
I'm very warm.
I'm very, very warm and very tired.
Yes.
Let's get done. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Talk Star Wars is a proud member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Find us at StarWarsCommonwealth.com alongside
the Tumbling Saber Podcast,
the Generation X-Wing Podcast,
the TSW Roundtable,
the Skyhoppers Podcast,
and the Nerd Room Podcast.
Head to StarWarsCommonwealth.com and take your first steps into a larger world.
It's
a wrap!
It's a wrap.
Let's talk about Loot Crate. Are you on a quest for epic gear, housewares and collectibles? Loot Crate offers an epic range of pop culture items for less than $20 per month. Whether you're shopping for the geek in your life or you are that geek, Loot Crate is the best surprise you know is coming.
Every month there's a different theme and new and exclusive items that you can only get with Loot Crate. Treat yourself every month or give the gift of geeking out to a friend or a loved one. You have until the 19th at 9 PM Pacific to subscribe and receive that month's crate, and when the cut-off happens, that's it, it's over. Make sure to head to lootcrate.com/TalkStarWars and enter the code TalkStarWars and save $3 off your new subscription today.